many people hate you, X-Men The Last Stand. How many people despise you, going so far as to call you one of the worst comic book movies ever made. Oh, your reputation precedes you, to say the least. But, being one of those people that did not watch it when it first came out, and hasn't really seen it in full until now, I'm here to give you a fair and honest chance. So, let's get to work. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station. I'm a fan of the animation, including TVs and movies as well. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome to my review of the critically panned and fan-despised X-Men 3: The Last Stand. This is a movie that a lot of people love to crap on. But considering what's come out since then, you can do worse. I mean, come on, guys. Dark Phoenix exists. That'll always be the worst, one of the worst things ever. The movie's so bad that I refuse to review it. So, is this movie really that bad? Is it really the horrible piece of crap that people build it up to be? Just like Spider-Man 3. Well, let's find out together, shall we? This is my personal 100% subjective review of X-Men The Last Stand. If my thoughts anger you in any way, I apologize. And if you still are one of the people that hate this movie, that's entirely you, okay? I'm not here to crap on your opinion or say that your opinion is unjustified or that your opinion is unnecessary or doesn't have a point. I'm not one of those people. You are entitled to your opinion as long as you respect my opinion. Okay? Just want to make that clear before I get angry fanboys in my comment section. So, without further ado or delay, let's dive into this one together. I have a decent length written review for this one, as well as a few extra things that I want to say. So, sit back, relax, please put down your guns and pitchforks, and enjoy. Yes, I know that this movie is despised by many, and like Spider-Man 3, which came out only a year later, this came out in 2006, it infamously has been labeled as one of the absolute worst comic book movies ever made by everyone who saw it back then, and most people that still watch it now. But like I said before, I only have nostalgia for the original, and pretty much all of these sequels are first-time watches for me, so as a result, my perspective isn't tainted by that immense backlash it has received over the years, as instead it's completely fresh and 100% fair. So, with all that said, and having just finished watching it in its entirety for the first time, here's how I personally see it. It is the weakest of the original trilogy, and it does have a lot of problems. But, in my personal 100% subjective opinion, you know what, let's save that till the end. So, positives first. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is still great. He will always be great, and you will not be able to convince me otherwise. Even in that terrible Origins movie, he's still great as Wolverine. The action scenes are awesome. Nothing more to say there. The final battle succeeds at being grandiose and a ton of fun to watch. Yes. The runtime feels more fitting as it's gone back to being under 2 hours, thankfully. Yeah, why was X-Men 2 over 2 hours? Why? That just felt like a bit of a stretch. But thankfully it's gone back to being an hour and a half, maybe less. So, it's a lot easier to watch this time. The effects are solid. The effects have gotten much better since the original movie. A lot like, again, Spider-Man. I'm sorry to keep drawing this comparison, but it is eerie how much of a comparison there is between these two films and their original trilogy. Where the first movie, effects have not aged well, and they look bad by today's standards. but with their second and third film, their effects got a lot better. Kelsey Grammer as Beast was fantastic. I mean, I think everyone, even the haters, have praised that one, so no need to go into depth there. The bridge scene is a huge series highlight. I'm sure that everyone that hates this movie can agree that the scene with Magneto lifting up the bridge and taking it all the way to Alcatraz Island with his army on top of it, with just his powers of magnetism, is one of the most awesome badass scenes in any comic book movie. Or at least that's the way I see it. Ratner does a decent job filling Singer's shoes as director. Why was he kicked out as a director? I don't know, I haven't really done 100% research on it, but if I had to guess, probably creative differences. A lot like when Sam Raimi left the Spider-Man movies after the third one. And it has one of the most brutal and heartbreaking deaths of any comic book movie I've ever seen, which was then followed by a very well done and emotionally touching funeral. I'm specifically talking about Professor Xavier's death. Yes, I'm going to talk about it a little bit because it is one of the biggest parts of the movie. His death at the hands of the Phoenix is brutal. It is slow. You can feel all the pain that he's going through in the moment. And his death pretty much signifies that Jean has completely snapped. Like, this death was her breaking point. And while I think that the Phoenix was a terrible villain, this scene did a great job building up to her completely snapping. And the funeral itself, while it is kind of brief, because, like I said, this movie's not nearly as long as X2, it's still really well done and touching. Not to mention, it's a fan favorite character. Now, I'm not going to say the same thing about Cyclops, because his death was not only rushed, but it's also because James Marsden was just never a good Cyclops. Sorry. But Professor X's death, yeah, that was impactful. And it really escalated how far things have gone in the wrong direction. And I will also give this movie this. They also had a really good concept for the story. You know, having this cure being made and giving the mutants the opportunity, the choice to either continue being who they are or get the cure and try to find a better life in normal society. Like, this is something that I believe that the comics themselves have touched on a few times, and in this movie, it's done decently. You know, until the final act where it's thrown out the window. However, then there's all the problems. This movie has a lot of problems. Let's start with the haphazard story. It's haphazard. It feels like way too many things are being thrown together all at once, and it just doesn't work. Phoenix being a massive letdown and overall terrible villain that completely bastardized the source material. The Dark Phoenix saga is arguably the most famous comic book storyline in X-Men history. But in this movie, it is treated as nothing more than window dressing. Yes, she kills Xavier. That was brutal as F. But outside of that, what does she do? Threatens Magneto one time, and does nothing until the very end of the movie. Lame. The anticlimactic ending, specifically the final 5 minutes where it just rushes the ending way too quick. Just, no. That was the one part where the pacing just did not work. All the stupid crap with Archangel that added pretty much nothing. All his scenes were so boring I wanted to hit the skip button. But I resisted. I resisted just for that freaking satisfaction of saying that I sat through these boring scenes. Like, he didn't need to be in here. His story pretty much adds nothing. And you could cut him out and miss nothing. And as a character, he is very, very bland. I mean, I feel bad for him in the scene at the beginning when he's cutting his wings off, but aside from that, I just don't care. I really just don't care. You could have cut him out of this movie and still get the same result. Not to mention a shorter runtime too, because a bunch of his scenes take up too much time as well. So, His crap was stupid. You could have cut that out and missed nothing. Rogue getting character assassinated, and her relationship with Bobby being pretty much ruined just to have Kitty Pryde instead, who has no character. This, in my opinion, is the worst part of the movie, because ever since the first movie, it feels like Rogue has been built up to be a vital, valuable member of the X-Men. But in the second one, she gets sidelined and barely does anything. And now in this third one, her entire character is assassinated. What do I mean by that? I mean by the fact that the writers have no idea how to write her character in this movie. It's very stupid. It is absolutely insulting. And considering she was the one consistent character in all three of these movies since the very first scene of the movie, for this to be her ultimate ending is insulting, especially if you do watch the source material, and if you've seen the X-Men animated series, and you know how cool this character can be. But now she's just evolved into a whiny farce. Pathetic. And Bobby, throughout this entire movie, I wanted to punch this guy. I wanted to punch him. Yes, he's not an upstanding a-hole like Pyro, but the problem with Bobby is that he pretty much completely ruins his own relationship with Rogue by being next to Kitty Pryde the entire movie. Next to her in the final battle, next to her in the opening simulation battle against what I think is supposed to be an homage/reference to the Sentinels. By her side when she's crying over Xavier's death. There's no romantic chemistry between these two. At least with Rogue and Bobby, there was a little bit. But because Rogue gets thrown out because the writers don't know how to write her character anymore, Bobby ends up with Kitty Pryde. And Kitty Pryde has no character, and you could have, again, cut her out, missed nothing. And because he does that to Rogue throughout this entire movie, I wanted to punch him in the face. I wanted to punch him. Heck, even his battle against Pyro is not all that satisfying. So yeah, Rogue gets character assassinated. In my opinion, it is by far the worst part of the movie. Mystique getting taken out way too early. Mystique through both of these movies has been really good and a very solid secondary antagonist. And just overall a really cool character that I've always enjoyed. But in this movie, she gets one good scene. And then she gets hit with the cure and taken out way too early and pretty much has nothing to do in the movie after that aside from exposing Magneto. That's it. That is the ultimate ending for one of the most badass characters in the entire trilogy. Lame. And very bland dialogue. The dialogue in this movie is bland. Even Wolverine's, it's just okay, this doesn't sound cool, and you don't sound cool while you're saying it. You just sound like a dork. And the whole freaking love triangle thing with Jean. While it does a good job establishing why Wolverine is so hesitant to kill this Phoenix, it still just does not work. Because there wasn't really a love triangle to begin with, because Jean had no chemistry with Logan, and no chemistry at all with Cyclops. With that entire love triangle, I felt none of that chemistry. Which, again, I'm sure you can probably find better examples of in the source material and the original animated series. Come on, man. This is just basic freaking stuff here. Also, let's talk about it, because I know if I don't talk about it, as much as I don't want to talk about it, I'm going to get comments up the rear end about it if I don't bring it up. That infamously terrible meme of Juggernaut spouting off a line so bad that I'm sure even Deadpool would cringe at it. You know what the line is? I already said I'm going to try not to curse in these reviews from now on, so I'm not going to repeat it. But if you've been around the internet long enough, you know the line and you know how cringe it is. Not to mention, Juggernaut himself is underutilized. Huge shame. So, that's going to bring me to my overall thoughts. And bringing it back around to the question I asked at the very beginning of this review. Is this movie that bad? Does it deserve to be labeled as one of the worst comic book movies ever made? Does it deserve the hate, bile, and spite that it has gotten in the past nearly 2 decades since it initially came out in theaters in 2006? Well, this is my overall final opinion. And like I said, 100% subjective. You're allowed to disagree if you want to disagree. Overall, this is far from a perfect movie, and definitely the weakest of the original X-Men trilogy. But it is a decent watch, and it's pretty entertaining. Like, in my opinion, the good stuff outweighs the bad stuff. Not by much, but it still outweighs it, even if it's just by a small bit. Sure, it could be much better, but considering that Origins Wolverine, New Mutants, X-Men Apocalypse, and the abysmal trash fire that was 2019's Dark Phoenix all currently exist in today's timeline and climate and history, you can certainly do a lot worse than this. So, in my personal opinion, The Last Stand is not a bad movie. It's a decent movie. It's an okay movie. But I can see the criticism, and it does have a lot of problems. But I had a decent time, and especially after sitting through that piece of trash I had to sit through today called Reign of the Supermen, I needed this. This was a palate cleanser. So, yeah, I'm kind of on the side of the positive on this one, but I'm not, 100% positive. This movie has its problems, and I have fairly critiqued it. But I can't say I wasn't entertained, because the good stuff is still good. Some of the scenes in this movie are some of the best in the entire series. Xavier's death is still tragic and brutal. Magneto lifting the bridge to get to Alcatraz Island, one of the most badass scenes in any comic book movie. The final battle, while it is a bit contained because it's only on this one island, it's a bunch of different mutants going up against the US Army and the X-Men. It's still a really cool battle, is what I'm saying. And Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is still as great as ever. Even in the worst of movies, a la, again, Origins and Apocalypse, he's still the best part of the movie. He's still a great casting and a great choice of this character. He's just not given very good writing to work with. That's the problem. So, weighing in the good and the bad and putting it all together, I think it comes together to make a final verdict of my 100% subjective opinion, a 6 out of 10. A 6. It is slightly above average. It's a decent film. But I do see why most people don't like it, and I'm not gonna hate you for not liking it. If you think this movie's crap, you think this movie's crap. That's your opinion. But in my personal opinion, I think it's a little overhated. It's not a great movie, no. It is the weakest of the original 3, but it's not that bad either. And again, considering what comes after it, you can do way worse. As is, it is a flawed but solid enough conclusion to a flawed but solid enough trilogy, and far from one of the worst comic book movies ever made. Man of Web. Morbius. Enough said. Give it a try for yourself. If you haven't seen it yet, give it a try. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. And if it does end up working for you, I'm glad I was able to point you in the right direction. It's a divisive movie that'll always be a divisive movie, but in my opinion, I think it's worth at least one try. And if it doesn't work for you after that, that's okay. Your opinion is your opinion. Yeah, a bit of an unexpectedly positive one, but I'm glad I got to end my day on a positive note and not on a piece of crap. So, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this almost every single day. And I'll see you guys next time when we move into a new generation of X-Men as we start going backwards in time as we take a look at some of the prequels, beginning with X-Men First Class.
You cannot take it anymore. The time has come to go. Prepare for the ready for.